In this episode of the Exploring Information Security podcast, what is a student-powered SOC?
Computers now have primary control of critical functions.
Houston, recommend vector transfer.
Your go for APU shutdown on time.
Roger, go for deploy.
Nice to be in orbit.
Welcome to the Exploring Information Security podcast, where you will learn, explore, and grow your security mindset. I am your host, Timothy D. Block, and in this episode, we'll be exploring student-powered SOCs. With me to do that is Bruce Johnson, Senior Director of Enterprise Security at TekStream. Bruce brings an impressive background in security, infrastructure architecture, and guiding multidisciplinary teams through partnerships and major organizations and universities like LSU and NJUT and GIIT. Bruce developed a student-powered security operations center, or SOC, that exposes students from every major to automation, threat intelligence, and incident response. This model is not only filling critical gaps in workplace readiness, but it is actively reshaping how the next generation steps into mid-level security roles. Show notes can be found at exploresec.com/EIS. Feedback for the show, Timothy D. Block at exploresec.com. You can hit me up on LinkedIn. Also, rating the podcast on your favorite podcast platform helps grow the show and gives me feedback. We are starting up a community, so we have a Discord channel. Go to exploresec.com/community, or if you just go to exploresec.com and click on the community button, and you'll see how to sign up there. You can sign up also for our listserv, which is a Google Groups. I will promote certain things for the podcast then. It's also an invite to our live podcast recordings, which happen every third Tuesday of the month. And you can check out the details for that at meetup.com for more details. So this was a really interesting conversation around student-powered SOCs. Bruce has done that with TekStream. It's an idea that I've heard from someone else talking with another university about doing the exact same thing, and I think it's just a great idea to give people or students an opportunity to kind of see what working in a real SOC is like. And if you know what a university environment's like, it gets pretty gnarly, pretty nasty. And so it's a good learning ground for a lot of people. And that then helps people that are jumping into cybersecurity, because especially if they can put that on the resume, that helps. But then also they can come on and really contribute to a SOC almost right out of the gate. And I think that's very beneficial for our cybersecurity field. So anything to really help people get a foot in the door and also come in and really bring some value. So not really much else to say. Let's go ahead and get right into it.
Yeah, no, it's a well-established solution now, and fairly differentiated in the approach that we have, and extremely efficient at this point in terms of both, implementing the SOC as well as onboarding students, as well as getting them now to address a decent percentage of the overall incidents that come in. We have a lot of metrics that we've captured there that show that we're compressing a lot of those time frames so that there's faster time to value.
Yeah. So is that like the university then buys the student-powered SOC and then they run it within their own environment? That's great.
It's essentially the university, or for a lot of the universities, they purchase it, or it can be purchased through a REN. To be honest, often, and we'll get into this, the funding sources for the SOC platform to keep the school safe are often different from the funding sources for workforce development.
So you're saying the actual SOC itself versus the people manning it are two different things then?
Exactly. So, people that care about kind of the academic side, the student side of building cybersecurity talent are often leaning on different funding sources from those that want to do kind of the SOC itself.
Well, and that's great too, because I imagine part of the pitch with the cybersecurity degree is that you give people, you want your university or education, campus to be spitting out people that are contributing almost immediately to the cybersecurity field.
And stay local, especially when you start to combine, because we're seeing that collaboration between, it's almost like a three-way collaboration in many cases now, between the state, the institutions, and then private TekStream. So it's a private-public partnership, but there's many kind of constituents or stakeholders that it serves.
Yeah, no, that's I think that's great because we've talked about that. I guess the skills shortage within cybersecurity, right? And I think this really helps address. And it also, my biggest gripe with the education institutions is that it feels like they're always five years behind. But if they're actually training on, and I know somebody that works at a large university, and the stories they have is just wild. So I think it's a great training ground for people that want to get into cybersecurity.
It's awesome, and you mentioned kind of that, and that ability to respond to market pressures. That's squarely on us as an MDR provider. So we have to have AI rolled in. We have to have efficiencies and as much automation as we can. That is practical. We're taking kind of an expert in the loop type of approach to AI so that the students and our own analysts are in the loop. But yeah, we are, in terms of the environment that people see, yes, it's weird. There are obstacles in the current environment that are almost pushing against each other. The need for cybersecurity talent is growing. The SA1 level need is shrinking. So because of use of AI, those SA1 skills are not as in demand, but they are essential to have for a student that's graduating. Students are graduating and not finding jobs because they don't have 2 years of experience, which is the minimum entry requirement, and they're maybe not trained as SA2s, right, or security analyst level 2s when they come out of school. And then, so, it's that there are many obstacles to making this work now. And I feel that the collaboration, this private-public collaboration that we're doing is squarely in the middle of all of that. We've had one of the things that surprises me when we talk about workforce development is, well, two things. One, how valuable the CISOs and the sponsors of these programs see the transcript that we produce, right? Because the transcript gives, here are the use cases that I tackle. This was the level of complexity. Here was my productivity. This is my quality. This is, just a working SOC for a number of years and the types of threats and institutions that I covered. So that transcript is something that we would track for our own analysts, but it instills a degree of professionalism in a student analyst that is rare to have when you come out of school. So it's almost like a practical skills program on top of what they're learning in academia. And then the second part of that is the reputational value to a school. So not only are they impressed by the ability to the 100% placement of students out of the program and the leg up it gives them when they're competing with people that actually have experience instead of just academic backgrounds. It is the reputational value that it brings to a school, because that part of it is kind of cool and not expected, because initially we were promoting this workforce development program as a cost savings measure, because it is that too for a lot of CISOs that want to pay their students between $17 and $25 an hour to do security analyst work, right? And they tier that typically because we have multiple levels of complexity that they handle in terms of the threats. But it's that reputational focus is one that's interesting because students, when their parents are thinking about a school to send them to, and there's a higher degree of placement rate, and there's, a program that gives them real world experience in the context of cybersecurity, and they can make six figures when they get out of school, that has a lot of value. That has definitely differentiating from a school perspective. And although there are a lot of people now that are trying to get into this space, there are nuances to the program that make it effective.
My view too has been part of security too, is that you have to understand some of the technology ahead of time. And so putting a student right into a security operations center, right out of college, has always been kind of difficult from my perspective. But again, if they're getting practical things like this, and again, too, the people that kind of climb the ladder don't necessarily want to go look at logs all day or try to figure out, some people just aren't built like that. So you kind of need some of the young blood to come in and kind of, be enthusiastic and excited about doing some of that. And we also need a lot of them, because that's another aspect of it, is burnout. Is people, I've been through a SOC, and 4 months in, I was like, this is not how I want to work. But some people love that, but even still, they can burn out of that really quickly.
Well, there has to be a lot of effort put into, ringing the bell when it's appropriate, right? So fidelity is absolutely critical, and burnout for noisy environments is definitely pretty common. So there's a lot of engineering that goes into improving, your overall solution. And we use 4 metrics: visibility, fidelity, automation, and operations. And we have dimensions that we meet with our stakeholders every quarter to see, are we improving on those scores? So there's a lot that comes into that. But what we found is the biggest indicator of a successful security analyst is our critical thinking test, because we have a kind of a formalized onboarding process that brings students in and teaches them the tools, the run books, teaches them cybersecurity in the background, and then there's sponsors in the program that give them hands-on kinds of labs and so forth, formalized training. And so when they come into the program, we've been able to shorten our onboarding. I think we started at 11 weeks and we're down to 6 weeks. And the biggest indicator of success for us is a critical thinking test.
Yeah.
So, if you have someone, regardless, because we have diversity of backgrounds, we have people that are psych majors in the program. And some of that's practical because they can't all be on, if they're all in IT, they're all, taking the same test schedules. So then they're all out at the same time. So we have to have a variety of people in the program with different majors. But if I have someone that is curious enough to say, I see geographically improbable login, let me go check a Facebook account to see if I see vacation photos. You know what I mean? It's that kind of due diligence. That's a kind of curiosity and drive. And you're so right with the young and intelligent minds that we have coming into this program that are fascinated to catch one of those things. They're driven with that kind of stuff. So if we can find those types of individuals and just turn them professionally paranoid, we got a winner. You know what I mean? We have someone that we can train in the ways and the arts of cybersecurity and the various layers of the architecture and hunting and pivoting and all that good stuff. And we mature them incrementally through the program because we complexity score everything. So we start them out with, I use the pyramid of pain basically to rank complexity. And so we start them out with geographically improbable login, brute force, file hash, IP reputation, all that kind of stuff at the lowest level. And then when they're ready, we can push them up into networking or into ultimately TTPs, right? And we have the curriculum tailored to that. So it really makes it easy for us to onboard people. We do shadowing and reverse shadowing so they learn from our essays. It's been working extremely well. And certainly we've captured a lot of metrics from the program. Everybody involved is winning.
So how do you give a critical thing? Is that like what you're talking about, the different scenarios?
It's really, truly just a critical thinking test. And it's really hard to spoof, it's really hard to plug into AI, So it's really just a critical thought test. And it's more around logic problems than anything else. And if they have that type of skill, that is really correlated very well for us with successful essays.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's good to test for that too. I think a lot of people would be interested, and it sounds like it might be proprietary, which, props to you if you've got that figured.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's what I've had a lot of those conversations. Like, one, how do you teach this kind of stuff? But two, in like an interview process, this is where you want to try to suss out some of that stuff. Are they going to be good in this role because they have the critical thinking skill for it? Yeah, exactly. Well, part of what TekStream does is a lot of recruiting. So this kind of fit naturally for us. We used this test in vetting our own security analysts when we hired them. So we modified it somewhat, with some collaboration with the schools, and it's worked pretty well. They kind of put a lot of credence in it. And of course, with the recruiting side, we then have, recruiting counselors that meet with the students regularly to do their career planning. So we can pull all the metrics for how effective they're being in the SOC and, meet with them and say, hey, maybe you're not really ready to be a red teamer yet. You're not really ready for forensics. Why don't you mature to level 3? And then we can talk about where you go from there. Or if you want to be an engineer, you should. So there's a lot of counseling that we do that's kind of built into the program to meet with the students. And then obviously placement, there's an upside for us if we're placing some of those or hiring them for TekStream, selfishly. We do that from time to time if there's a need.
But because our recruiters have, tendrils into pretty much all of the commercial space, as well as then arrangements with state and local. So one of the things that's attractive from state agencies is that they'd really love to have some of these cybersecurity engineers graduating from their alma mater to come work with them. And so there's a lot of challenges at the state level to keep people hired and to keep people local. And obviously that kind of a pipeline or in sending that kind of path has synergies for that collaboration between, state agencies and state level cybersecurity institutions and the higher ed. So that, that collaboration is working out a lot too.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's good. That's, I lived in a town where there was only a certain tier that you could get to as far as job wise, but it's also, I had a conversation with someone as I was leaving town. It's like, we can't keep talent in this town. And I think this is a good scenario where that is a possibility then. Yep.
It's certainly something, in some cases we can facilitate that by, having the students be part of our whole of state solutions. So we have a lot of JSOCs we've kind of architected really to support JSOCs with, very interesting kinds of federated architectures and permutations therein. And so our ability then to do some state funding and collaboration and pipelining for students into the agencies we support is certainly something we facilitate.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I kind of want to go back to something because we've already kind of talked about the AI is how much you feel like students are having to shift from knowing, I guess, cybersecurity related concepts to learning how to actually just use the AI for the right prompts.
So there's some constraints in terms of how they are supervising AIs, right? And we certainly want, there are, three areas that we are training or looking to train students for AI. One is using it in the context of incident response. The other is supervising it. And then the other is, kind of the broader management challenge, understanding AI more broadly. And so in the context of incident response, there's not a lot of, there's some level of interaction, but really what the AI, at least as we've adopted it as a, kind of expert in the loop to default, by default initially, which is a lot of, you're either taking one of two paths as an MDR or security provider. One, you're trying to automate the workflow completely and do as much as you can on an automated basis. And then humans are kind of there to correct, or you're just starting with kind of humans in the loop as default and then automating opportunistically. And so that we're taking the latter path, which is having a really good impact on productivity. Certainly having an AI in the context of incident response means that all of the hunting and pivoting and analysis is there at your fingertips when you're going through your automation playbooks to determine and disposition and remediate that threat. We start with, like everything that we do training the AI on a client level, on a client basis, but we point it selectively at use cases where it has most benefit. And then we can selectively in the SOAR environment decide what to do with the disposition, whether we fully automate it. The easiest target for that is like false positives, if we want to auto close false positives. But we want to start with, we have built our SOAR framework with an automation harness that allows us to stub out interaction with humans or full on automation. And that's elective. No matter how many tools that we have at our disposal here or how good the AI is, it's still a trust game. It's still us earning the trust of our customers. So inevitably, we start automating small, and that improves over time as we trust the people that we're interacting with or collaborating with, as we trust the processes, and as we trust the technology. So this whole trust game is built incrementally over time. We've just architected in a way that it's simple to adopt incrementally. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, and I think with AI too, this is actually my next question was around the concern, I guess, around it's hallucinations. I don't know that I like that, but it's just like getting the right information. I mean, I've been in this industry for a long time, so I can look at AI and go, that's bullshit, or that's not correct, or I disagree with it. But a student coming in it doesn't necessarily have that.
Yes. And that's why we have a lab, and we have to be able to turn on and off the AI to second guess the AI. We're working, to maybe have some incorrect results. And certainly context is everything. Understanding the context for the AI might be limited in its analysis. You have to be able to understand how to do that level 1 work before you can supervise. Because for you and I looking at a disposition for an AI, it's easier for us to detect that it made a really bad assumption. But unless you've got experience with those types of threats, those types of use cases, you're not going to know that. So it's this massive gap for students coming out of school, because they are coming out with what are kind of, either it's low-level skills that don't apply anymore because they're automated and they don't know how to supervise an AI, or they've come out with AI being something they rely on and they're lazy. And that's what everybody's worried with AI, is that we're getting lazy. You know what I mean? I use it so much in my job. It's I worry for that too. But I think at this point, it's almost an organizational tool for me. It's almost like how do I organize my thoughts around a topic structurally? And then I rewrite everything, to a certain extent. And so that, maybe that's a terrible example in the context of incident response, because that is more of a regimented hunting and pivoting and trending type of analysis that the AI is providing in most cases. So, but there's so many ways that AI is going to play into, forensics and breach response and proactive detections, vulnerabilities, everything we're doing, every process that we're doing is going to benefit from AI. And we have our own agentic AI framework that, that is going to govern a lot of those processes. It's exciting. It's exciting for everyone, but it's also very crowded. And so we want to make sure is that we are at the forefront of those innovations, while at the same time being able to mature students to be effective in that environment. Yeah. The analogy that we're using is like we're training students how to ride a bicycle and asking them to merge onto a freeway. I mean, it's just it's going to be ugly.
Yeah. Well, I also think they'll figure it out, because I think it is a tool that's going to enhance kind of, their capabilities and things like that. So I think at the end of the day, they're going to become better than we were at that, back in the day. I mean, I remember having to go through documentation, but then Google came along, and now it's like I can Google stuff. That improved my job significantly.
I'm so old, I was at a time where they outlawed calculators in the classroom. So, you know what I mean? So but every wave of innovation is the same problem. We have to rely on these tools, and we have to be ready for them. So I'm not a horse and buggy cybersecurity guy. I welcome all these changes.
Yeah, me too as well. What's the single biggest lesson your organization has learned about security operations or team dynamics from working, alongside the student-powered SOC?
Metrics drive a lot. I think that the other side of it that's been really pleasantly surprising for me anyway, and talking to the students, is that they learn skills that have nothing to do with cybersecurity. They have to do with collaborating on a team, being accountable, being professional, being an adult. Brings them out of their shell. Maybe they were a student that was, very isolated, and they get to work more broadly. I love those kinds of stories, because you really are making such a difference in those lives. And to be honest, I'm an old guy. This kind of is a capstone in my career to introduce this type of a solution. It's not just because it's viral and it's kind of surpassing the other JSOCs in higher ed or whole estate solutions, but so success is part of it, but it's just the impact that it's making, to be honest.
Yeah, no, and I think that's great. And that's not something I had thought about, but yeah, definitely that getting college students to work with each other on things that are very important, right? It's
the stories they tug at you, the stories of what these kids are learning when they come out of school. It's very gratifying work.
Yeah. Well, and you have to learn how to work even in cybersecurity, especially not only within your own team, but with your business partners. Like that's a huge aspect of it.
There's some just show up to work kinds of lessons that they're learning. So, yeah. So,
Yeah, cool. How have you seen, I guess, some of the people graduating from this as far as going from an environment of a university to something like healthcare or manufacturing, or like have you gotten any lessons from that, or just seen anything from kind of the change in the environment for them, or is it all kind of the same for them as far as their work in the university side?
I suppose it depends on the level that they're graduating with. I mean, if they've been in the program for 3 years and they're ready for higher order types of cybersecurity challenges, then they start to become familiar with more complex threats, but also then the assets that protecting the higher level processes. So there's definitely a higher there's a gap, let's say, that might be industry specific, but their baseline skills don't change a great deal. If they're protecting PHI and their class of assets a little bit different from what they were protecting at the university, they still have the basic concepts of how to deal with that. And if they're higher level, then they have to become familiar maybe with the GRC requirements or what types of threats that they face that are different in that industry and all of that. And that is certainly a big part of being effective within a company environment or within one of our clients. But I don't think that's a massive gap for them.
It actually sounds like you're trying to prepare them not just for this type of work, but being able to critically think about stuff and dig into stuff, and that's a large part of how I thought about it when I was working in the SOC was you're kind of like a detective, and you're not necessarily going to have all the answers or all the pieces of information you need to, and you have to sometimes also it's never going to be black and white. I've seen people struggle because they want a black and white, they want a yes or no, and it's like working in a SOC is not that. It's more of a risk score.
I mean, that's so true. And once you've been in a complex threat scenario where you're coming up with a diamond model, or you're trying to decompose, you're trying to follow you're trying to determine blast radius, trying to follow did this user click on this URL and where did they gain C2 and what's the registry? Learning how to hunt and pivot in that context is an easily universal skill or transferable skill into any company, I feel like.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right, what would you like to plug?
I don't know. I guess our overall maturity with this thing. I would plug the fact that we've been doing it for 3 years, and the fact that we've gotten so much better at all aspects of this thing. So we track metrics for student productivity, and much of the cost savings is realized when students are taking on the major part of the incidents. Well, we've got within a quarter, once we onboard students within a quarter, they're taking on like 50% of the volume. They're dealing with, medium to high complexity. So the success of the program has been proven in multiple ways, from the placement of the students to the efficiency of the onboarding process, even from a technical perspective, because we have this concept of neighborhood watch within higher ed and with whole of state, so that agencies that are related to one another or institutions that are within the JSOC, when they have a threat, it's typically a shared threat. They can share the threat, not just threat list, but the context of the threats that they're seeing. And we have visibility into all of those institutions so that we can proactively look for those threats holistically and then deploy in real time new detections across that ecosystem. So for us, that degree of collaboration and transparency is really, really helpful for us, helpful for everyone that's involved. And ours is uniquely, maybe if I'm going to plug something else, an investment solution. And what I mean by that is it's not an outsourced expense. So the institutions actually own the licenses for their SIM environments, for instance. They grant us access, right? So if they were to pull the plug on us, they retain everything that they built from an asset perspective. And so, that's just that's kind of our DNA, if you will, as a consulting company, is making sure that we're building value collaboratively with our clients. And so that's perhaps so that they don't have to maybe start over from scratch with new detections and fidelity problems and all the rest of that stuff. And I think that kind of supports a lot of the bring our security problem in-house kind of thing instead of outsourcing it. So that also is a trend that I think this model does well at supporting.
Cool. What if people want to reach out about this product or any of your other offerings, how can they reach out? TekStream.com. That's TekStream. So TekStream with a K.com. Bruce, thanks for coming on to talk about the student-powered SOC.
Yeah, I'm pretty passionate about it, Tim. Thanks for the venue. We appreciate it, man.